country, but I don't think there's any one single thing that is out there now. There used to be a lot of agencies that did provide support, but they went several years ago.
Where would you find an index of those?
Normally your local council should be able to help you. So especially if you've got enterprise department, they should have those details. It does vary. There'll also be, you see, I mentioned the course that we've got, and this isn't to sell the course, but the starting point, especially for micro business, is not bringing someone else in. It's a bit like health and safety, because actually you think it's very complicated and it's quite logical. And environmental stuff, to a large degree, unless you've got a very complex manufacturing organisation, is normally quite logical. And it's about looking at those base points and saying, how does that relate to my business? Am I doing as much as I can do? Could I do it a bit better? And if so, what do I do next? So, and the course we've got covers a lot more than environmental stuff, but that obviously is a big part of it. And I think that's got to be the starting point for anyone in terms of environment, whether you use our course, whether you just do it yourself. Start there. Then you might get to a point where you think, well, actually, I don't know how to do that. Are there any environmental consultants that can help me? Some of them will come and do a survey free of charge anyway. But so much of it for the majority of businesses is very, very logical. If you want to go down the net zero route, then you'll probably need support with that. A word of warning. And I'm quite interested in this because a lot of us that are in this sort of area of work, and we always refer to sustainability as being very holistic. It's not just about environmental sustainability, but some people talk about it in just an environmental context. And net zero narrows it down even further because it's about carbon. And of course, we do need to reduce our carbon impact. That's an imperative. But if in anything in business, as in life, you have to be very careful that you're not focused just on one area and you pull that and neglect everything else. So do make sure that you don't go rushing off into the sunset because this is sexy at the moment and I need to tick that box. Just do the right things. Take it from a grassroots approach. You know what you do in your business, no one else does. But transport, funny enough, there's a lot of IT stuff that needs looking at, supply chain.
I'm actually really very close to being carbon neutral. It's very just good. Electricity and transport that's there. So it's like I'm almost there. Just like what incentives are there?
In terms of incentives, I'm not sure that there's any incentives other than in a lot of areas you'll probably save money and reputational. It's got to be absolutely authentic, and it's probably a word that I overuse. But if you're almost there, if you're doing good stuff, are you talking about it? Have you got it on your website? Have you used it?
I just opened like a week ago. So
right, okay, bless you. That's great. That's fantastic. But that's probably the biggest incentive, actually, to use it not as a marketing tool. That'd be the wrong thing to say, but do use it in your marketing, but because it's important. It's not just because you need to shout about it. Aren't I wonderful? But actually, the more businesses, good businesses, profitable, successful businesses that are talking authentically about the good things they are doing, whether that's with their people, the community, or an environment, the more it becomes the norm. So the incentive is actually to be doing it, to be talking about it, and get the credibility for being a good business.
That's good because you're doing it right from the beginning.
Yeah, well, it's easier to do from the
start. You're starting on the right foot, so it's not a big job of work to do at a later date. You're already starting on the right path. One of the things you should look at is your website. Carbon footprint from the internet and that is way more than aviation. And it's set to double in the next 3 years.
We've got, there's one of our members is called the Eco Friendly Web Alliance.
It's brilliant.
And yeah,
We've just been using it for our organisation now. So,
there's a tool that connects very quickly.
It's really, and he's not expensive at all, and he just wants to get that message out there, and he's trying to do his best. I mean, he practically works for nothing, and actually don't know how he's feeding himself. But he's absolutely brilliant. He's well worth speaking to.
I'm glad that you've got that. And obviously in terms of what we do as an organisation, sharing those things. And Janet, I have to say, has been really, really supportive. And it's that collaboration, isn't it, with micro businesses? It's that power we have together, and it's that whole message of the power of micro business to make a difference if we collaborate and talk about good things we do. Sorry, I've gone a bit further.
You're all right. No, that's all great stuff. I just say, you said don't use it as a marketing tool. Should we not absolutely use it?
No, I mean, don't just use it as a marketing tool. Don't do it.
Is there an accreditation badge that I could get to say, look, I am?
There's loads.
Yeah.
I mean, again, some of our members, some people might know the Planet. If you're just talking about environment, Planet Zero, for example. But there's lots of environmental badges.
As a consumer, I think it needs to change, doesn't it? We're all guilty of going on products and looking at websites and going low to high, and we just are. I'm guilty of that. I am. You look disgusted, but I am, and I'll go for the cheapest product. I'll literally go for the cheapest product and go, that's it. But actually, if there was a big, well-recognisable household, a badge that said, actually, this was ethically sourced, it's carbon, lowest carbon possible, it tells you where it was, and they had like a badge of honour, I would absolutely use that. But at the moment, I am guilty, I just got no time.
Yeah. And lots of small businesses do that in various aspects of advice. But one tip, just to say, not that many incentives, except for the reputational one, which I think is really important, the ethical one, getting good people to work with you, straight out of school, university, college, whatever, because young people want to work with firms that do the right thing. But one tip is, if you are working with bigger customers who are well along the line to net zero, and they do know something about how to get there, is try to talk to them, because a lot of them, if they are good ethical businesses, are thinking about how to get the suppliers in their supply chain to net zero or decline whatever as well. And so they are quite often quite happy to help with advice.
They can only actually get to net zero if they have got suppliers in their supply chain, because it's a big part of that whole certification process.
We could do.
I will just say with accreditations and certifications, there are lots out there, and there are lots of really good ones. But do make sure that there's value in it. There's some out there, and I won't mention any names because Tony will probably tell me off if I do. There's some out there that are very much just a tick box exercise, and you get an accreditation. It's got no value, and it will backfire. And it's reputationally, it might be good at the beginning, but just be careful, see what it's all about. But there's lots of stuff out there.
I think there are massive opportunities in this space, and I'm sure everybody recognises that. But it's only going to increase. And I'll just give you an example. If we come into government, one of our commitments is £28 billion of government investment a year for the next 8 years in the green carbon future of society, which is match funding against a similar amount from the private sector for green technology and decarbonising and hitting net zero. So if you're ahead of the game, you're ready for whether we win or not, I hope that happens, but if we win, it will. And you're setting yourself up well. I think this is happening around the country increasingly. It's certainly happening in my region already, where if you are able to get those, go back to government contracts again, certainly at a regional level where it is a little bit easier to get local government procurement, there is now an inclusion and a recognition of your low carbon credentials in any bid you put in. So the more you do in this space, the better you'll do. And I would encourage any business now to be very, very seriously looking at your low carbon credentials and how you can maximise them.
Thank you. Could I just get the name of that web company again?
Yeah, do you want to catch me afterwards and I'll pass you the details?
Please, have you got the website to just say now for the live stream, please?
Sorry?
Have you got the website to say for the live stream?
Yes, sorry, it's the, I don't know what the actual website is, but if you just Google Eco-Friendly Web Alliance, and you'll find it.
Brilliant, yeah. Brilliant. You know, as a consumer, I think it comes back to the consumers really. We've all got to do our bit. When I'm shopping, I absolutely look for the fair trade badge and stuff like that. You know, and I'd just love to see that more on e-commerce websites when I'm buying products, definitely.
It's back to the thing that I was saying right at the beginning, talking about things, because when you're getting consumers, private sector, public sector, who want to purchase from people, goods and services, if you don't tell them that you are doing those things, how do they find you? How do they know what you're doing? So, yeah, obviously the priority is doing it, but talk about it too. You know, make sure it's on your website.
And tell them you need paying as well.
Yes, because you can't invest to get to net zero. You've got to pay.
Next question, guys.
Hello?
Yes. Sorry, Ian.
Yeah, Bill, question for you, sir. My name is Ian, thanks for attending today anyway. Appreciate that. I won't mention PQQs. That innovation comes from the microbiz space in this country and the SMEs. Okay, you know this. Government know this. And about 10 years ago, there was a bit of a scheme that large companies had to work with SMEs. I think a proportion of their turnover or profit maybe. And I attended a few of these SME innovation schemes with a lot of corporates, and we went for open days, and we had the presentations, and there was an SME innovation director there that would talk how we were going to work together. And we got zero work from these large companies. So a lot of it was paid lip service. Is that still a thing? Is the government still trying to push large corporates to work with us?
Well, when I was running a business, I remember going to things called Meet the Buyer, which I think is a similar. Yeah, okay, great. You can meet us. We're not going to buy from you.
Yeah.
You know, this is not a new problem, and it's just got worse. And one of the commitments we are making as government in waiting, like I said before, if the government wants to take our ideas and implement them now, great. We've achieved our objective. But if not, this is what we'll do, which is direct procurement. I mean, the Cabinet Office has been shouting about this for ages, actually. I didn't know the specifics of what you just give me there, Ian, but about direct procurement, and they say that procurement to small businesses, they're not just talking about micros here. I'm always interested in the definition that the Cabinet Office always uses, but anyway, they say that the procurement has gone up significantly, and yet whenever I've looked at the figures, the direct procurement hasn't actually gone down, and we're around about, I think it's gone down from 11, the last numbers I looked at, it's gone down from 11% of procurement to 9%. So that's not micros, I think that's SMEs, sorry to use that terrible term. So I'm determined to turn that around, get the kind of direct access. You know, it is things like breaking contracts up into smaller chunks, so they're easier to manage. It is things like having consortia and actually the organisers of procurement, whether that's government or the private sector, doing the facilitation for those consortia. There's an idea, rather than making it hard for businesses to jump through hoops. And just making the whole thing easy, so that you can get accreditation easily, and that you don't need 3 years accounts and evidence that you're growing. You don't, I'm not, those 3 letters, try not to keep using them. You take the bureaucracy out of it, and you do it with merits, and you make it a kind of straightforward process that it should be. Unfortunately, whether it's on procurement or anything else that government does, the tendency is to make things complex and difficult and bureaucratic, because that's the kind of way we've got used to doing things. We are so risk averse, and yet those of us who run businesses know that unless you're risk takers, you never really get anywhere. So like Labour Shadow Minister says, take more risk. That's not, that's not quite the point I'm making. But actually, unless we are prepared to be ambitious and to really look at new ideas and encourage innovation, which is the word you started with there, Ian. Where are we going as a country? Where are we going with developing business? Where are we going with developing opportunities for people? And that's got to be the agenda. So what is the ambition? What are we trying to achieve? And if the answer is we want to be ambitious, we want to have a good, I think this country's got a great future. I think business in this country's got a great future. We've got to make it happen.
Can I just tell you a little story?
You said we are the home.
Yeah. And can I just tell you a little story? A procurement officer, local authority procurement officer said to me a few weeks ago, he'd put out an expression of interest. He'd put out a bid, 200 expressions of interest from small businesses. He said, I was so excited because the ideas were enormously exciting. And when the bid closed, there were 3 mediocre bids from medium-sized businesses. So they want that talent coming through. And we've got to somehow or other find a way to make it happen.
If I can just say as well, you're talking about risk aversion, and a lot of that, the big problem that we need to sort out isn't even the councils per se, or the government, it's the procurement departments, because they are a law unto themselves. And there's a Social Value Act now that has got a bit more teeth than it did have when it's introduced in another guise. And part of the whole thing with the bigger businesses doing the meet the buyer and trying to engage small businesses is to meet this desire in the local authorities to actually have small businesses in the supply chain. So it might be not a direct contract, but bigger guys can say, we're working with these small businesses. So even just by, talking to the council and saying, we're lovely, we're doing these meet the buyer things, they're smiling up to them. But actually, when push comes to shove, they don't necessarily engage them. And also, with the local procurement departments, some are really good in the country in terms of embedding that social value aspect, which obviously gives a value to small businesses, because small businesses, we all know, provide social value into the local communities. But they don't know how to deal with it properly. And there needs to be an awful lot of work done in changing the mindset and the risk-averse approach within those procurement departments themselves. It's quite often you'll see them doing totally the opposite to what their councillors would want them to do.
Could I just ask you, offer a little bit of feedback on what Labour?
Absolutely.
And one thing I've noticed in my business, some of the large companies we work with, they back off the procurement and invoice and finance to offshore it. So that invoicing company will take 1 or 2% of the invoice. So our 60 days turns to 90 days. Because we're speaking to someone in the Netherlands who lost the PDF or lost the PO. So we're seeing a massive stretch. But there's a barrier between the company now. Obviously, it's not us, it's X company, and you need to speak to these guys. So.
Can I just add something as well? So my own business has gone through this process of trying to secure contracts and been unsuccessful. And I think it really comes back to fundamentally, what a micro business is, and it often is a sole trader or perhaps 1 or 2 people. And we're really good doing what we're doing, but we don't necessarily have the skills. We don't necessarily have the skills and the understanding of actually how to even put a bid in and the whole writing it. So where's the support? Where's the infrastructure to actually support that? Because we're flipping good at doing our products and services, right? That's what we're known for. But we're not all good at writing bids and knowing how to use the language and jump through the hoops. And I'm talking about the physical writing of bids. And I have spent months on my business. And I know that what we could do is add value. It's an early years DFE bid. And it was, and everybody, we've got to do this. And yeah, I know. And I've got the experience of bid writing that. And we still didn't get anywhere. And there were mediocre bids. Exactly what you said.
And that's where the 200 other expressions of interest went, because they couldn't.
Exactly. But where's the infrastructure? And that's me, who's got a lot of experience of bid writing, and I still couldn't get through. The average micro business is so busy getting on doing stuff, and they want to do it and they want to grow, but they haven't got the infrastructure. Where's that support?
It's the same with grants, Lorraine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can apply it to
ridiculous.
governments, to grants,
Yeah.
or whatever. Where's that support? Where's that infrastructure to help them to do that?
And
Because without that, you can put all the stuff in the world that you like to say, we genuinely welcome this, but if you haven't got that infrastructure,
Same
to
big
support
companies
those
winning
workers,
the
you're
tenders
not gonna
and
get
winning
them
the grants
coming
all the time, yeah, and it's
Absolutely.
heartbreaking.
Yeah. Look, if it's down to me, it will be something that's overturned. But you've already heard. I mean, you're right. I mean, this is. I just gently say, yes, there are problems in councils, absolutely, but they're following the central guidance, and it's the good ones will challenge it and find a way around it. And we had this was the sort of thing we did in COVID in the Liverpool City region. We found ways around it with a discretion. We really stretched on with the council offices and departments and the mayor's office. They really stretched the definition of discretion to help people. But that is the exception, not the rule, I'm saying. And I just come back to my point about risk. Which is more risky? Is it more risky to always give the contracts or the grants, actually, you're right about that, to the same handful of mediocre, very, very large corporates, the capitals of this world? I mean, that's what Carillion was, isn't it? And look what happened there. And the damage that did to the supply chain and many, many micro businesses through the supply chain. Is it more risky to do that in the end, or to use the innovation, you're dead right about this, which is my experience 15 years in business too, of the micro businesses, that ambition, that creativity, that commitment, that excitement, the energy that drives the economy. Which is more risky? I know what I think the answer is, and I'm sure you probably will agree.
Whole process just needs simplified, doesn't it?
Yep.
That's what we need. I went for a green grant to do a Christmas tree farm on some land, and it was the simplest thing in the world, And I spent weeks on it, going through the tender, going through the process, learning, looking online, bid writing, everything else, and no reason why not. And that's the frustrating thing. So you can't go back and alter it to the way they want it. And then guess what? In the local press, all the big engineering firms are getting the green grants for this big machine. And I'm thinking, what's the cap? I wanted to plant trees, which swallow up carbon monoxide and breathe out oxygen. And you don't get much greener than this. And I made it as simple as possible. I was going to put half the money off them. And it's a no. And there's only so many times you get that now, isn't there, Lorraine? You know what I mean? You get beat, and then you think, well, what's even the point? And it's the same with, like you say, you can go into these events and spending days of your time there and getting promised the world, and then when it comes to it, it just doesn't come to fruition. So I think the full thing needs simplified, doesn't it? Everything. Next question.
By the way, write to me. Tell me the answers to these things, because I'll feed it into our.
Make it as simple as possible in layman's terms, if that's where every normal person can understand it. But because the only answer I ever get as a small business, a micro business owner, is employ a bid writer. Where do I start with that? I'm going to pay a stranger £5 grand to try and get me a grant for £6 grand. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense, does it? But that's what they tell you to do. Employ, you need a bid writer. Oh yeah, no loads of them, mate. Yeah, I mean, what's a bid? So.
And there's a lot of micro charities out there who, so we talk about grants, we talk about all these things, and employing bid writers, and that this is a wider thing. This isn't just the micro businesses. This is all the micro organisations, whatever structure they've got. And I think it's so important. Is the simplification, but we've talked so much about people and actually the passion that the people bring. And we've got to look at the micro business owners and what they do in the community and how it's all brought together. So we talk about simplifying things, but it isn't just, like Lorraine said about putting in for her on to get her piece of work, but then she does something in the community with her son. And this is empowering communities. So actually, we're not just
And for me, it's a wide thing. It's not just a local business, and I think that's what's important. And I think if you look at these people in this room and people that are watching this live streaming and what we've done during COVID and everything else, you look at the micro business owners and what they've done, and that's why it's so important that we do get these people that, and we don't have to employ some big 5 brands that are going to get 6 grand for because that has been done. Well, that's another subject. But I think we've got to look at that bigger picture as well, and it's about the people.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely, and you know, like you said, Bill, we need to tell guys like Bill what ideas and suggestions we've got. You know, our friends from Hull, you guys run a great way of helping people apply for grants in a simple way, and actually granting people grants. And the people that are generally going for grants are young people, aren't they? You know, fledgling businesses, micro businesses, new to the game. You know,
but to do a spirited defence of councils, we won't be paying you in advance anymore, Abby. Because one of the problems is the serious point. Believe it or not, I don't have the power, and I'm supposed to be a middle-ranking officer, to pay out anything over £2,000. So somebody else has to put it onto the system. Fortunately, young Emma is extremely good at it, and she knows in terms of, particularly when supporting young micro businesses, I want to do it quickly. But then somebody else has to okay it, and then somebody in that finance department has to press the button. In that finance department, the people who used to press the button 4 or 5 years ago, there would have been about 10 or 15 of them, and they would all be doing different things. There's now 2.
oh, they're in the Netherlands.
No.
No, we have.
In the procurement department, we used to have 20. There's now 8. So devising huge contracts based on guidance by governments of all political parties over the last 20 years was big is beautiful, and big actually reduced your costs. And because you reduced your costs, you don't need as more people to actually to do the work. So give me the freedom to pay out and trust me to actually do it as a council officer, I will be held accountable. But it is quite ironic that a grade 4 is the one that actually presses the button, and I'm a grade 11. But in terms of the grants, yes, the Youth Bank has a simple form. It's a simple business plan. We do have people that actually help out. We've got panel members that help out. The difference is, it's not a charity. It's got nothing to do with the local authority, even though they keep trying to tell me that it is. It's got nothing to do with the left. It's got nothing to do with the Chamber of Commerce. An applicant can put an application in on the Monday. If there is a meeting in the next month, or even if there isn't, we'll set one up. It will make a decision. So only for God's sake, what are you?
Patron.
What am I? I mean, something just to keep them quiet. But the thing is, the Tony reminds us about how quickly those grants have to go out. Mike pays them out from a checkbook, and we do it. Ironically, if we had online banking, it would probably take us a lot longer. In some respects, that's one of the ironies of what we found. And actually, if we were proper charity, you'd probably find that we'd have great difficulties. And yet, I worked out the other day, you know, the 15 years we've dished out 300,000 quid. I have no idea where that's going. I have no idea where that's going. But it's helped 750 young people.
Amazing.
And we get it wrong. We accept that we get it wrong. But there are people that want to make it quick and easy and fast. But again, as Tina and Tony knows, we say we could make that available to young people in Scarborough. They went along to their local council, and their local council didn't want to operate. During COVID, we raised 112,000 quid for excluded young people from the government things. I don't know how many times I wrote to Rishi, including sending Tony's book, which he never thanked me for. Which
unforgivable.
It's declaration of interest. Receiving free gift from home. But the reality is, it does go, in all seriousness, it goes back to, if you've got people who understand or have an empathy with a micro business, then they will do their best they will bend every single rule going. But just remember, it's not necessarily the person's fault